Good day, everyone. HighRoad Solution is pleased to present this online webinar entitled Keeping Attendees Happy, Thoughts on Post-Event Engagement. Our speaker for the presentation today is Suzanne Carawin. My name is Jeff Baker, and I will be your moderator for today's seminar. Today's presentation will last approximately 45 minutes and include a specific question and answer period at the end of the session. You may enter a question into the web conference system by typing it into the Q&A box on the right-hand side of the screen and then clicking the call-out button or hitting enter on your keyboard. These instructions will be repeated later in the program. If you have any technical questions during the event, please email support@highroadsolution.com. Today's webinar is being recorded and all participant lines will be muted during the live program. Suzanne is an active participant, member, and volunteer. She's a member of the American Society of Association Executives and serves on their Meetings and Expositions Council. Suzanne also serves on the advisory board for the Event Alley Show and is a member of several event industry associations where she is a passionate advocate of event technology and marketing. With that, I would now like to turn the webinar over to Suzanne.
Thanks, Jeff, and welcome everybody. We've got a great little program here today. I think that you'll find it just nice and fun, so please sit back, relax, and let's start talking about post-event engagement, which I would contend is one of the, unfortunately, probably least understood and least proactively planned for phases of the event life cycle. So let's kick right into it. So here we are. We were at the event. We had a high level of emotion. We had a euphoric moment. We had a breakthrough time where we met new people. We were inspired. We were in the zone. And we felt like we really had a really what we would call a peak of engagement happening. And this was wonderful while we were off in the event that we had. Probably we're talking about a live event here. And it was great because we were almost in a retreat mode, right? So we were away from reality. We were able to kind of cut ties with our daily to-do lists and have a little window where we had some time for self-reflection, and we were open to new ideas, and we were there actively seeking to have this kind of emotional experience. And that's wonderful, and we bonded, and it was great. But this only happened, of course, at the event. And what we're looking at here is actually a huddle. We actually had a former NFL player come and talk to, this is our own HighRoad user group conference, and he had everybody come up and do a huddle, and it was one of those moments where everybody felt really bonded. They still talked to each other like, hey, you were one of the huddle members, et cetera. And it was a real high point of the conference where people made true memories occur because we had that crazy, magical combination of a new experience with new energy, with new people, and we actually were able to interact using many of our senses, in this case, touch and sight and smell, and people hugged and high-fived and the whole bit. And that was wonderful at our at-event emotion. But what then ends up happening is that we and while we're there, let me say before we go into that, we had what I call the clarity of peas. So in that euphoric moment, we had complete clarity in our mind. We were going to create this incredibly proactive plan that was based on purpose, that had power in it, that we were passionate about. We were going to go back into our regular workforce or into our regular lives, and we were going to change everything. This event, the experience we had, gave us this thrill and this hope and this optimism that we were going to go back and change things and do things differently. And we were saying to ourselves mentally and writing down in the plan, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I'm planning on doing, et cetera, et cetera. And we walked away from the event really on an emotional high, feeling very clear-headed and clear sight for what we want to do for the future. And then, of course, our blocking points start pouring in. So I call these little mental things and pieces of reality that start to interfere with that clear purpose, that clear vision that we once had at that moment, at that pinnacle of our event experience. I call those blocking points. And of course, the first one that usually hits you when you're at a live event is your reminder that it's time to check in for your return flight home. So as soon as these things start pouring through the iPhone or through the tablet or popping up, all of a sudden your connection to that event is starting to go on the decline. So you're starting to lose a little bit of connectedness with those attendees each and every moment you get closer to that ending session. So you have to start saying, okay, Are we looking at that phenomenon? Are we experiencing that? How many of our attendees are leaving early and not making it to the final keynote, et cetera, et cetera? And can we do something within the event and then post-event to not let go of that pinnacle of emotional engagement that we had at that one point? So the blocking points start pouring in. So first we said we've got, here it's time to go check in. Now we have to go pack the bags. Now we have to go ahead and leave and get our receipt, et cetera, from the hotel. We got to find a taxi. We got to find a super shuttle. We got to share rides with somebody. We got to get back. We have to go the hassle of flying back or taking the train back or somehow transporting ourselves back to home. And once we get to home, the reality of life starts kicking in, right? So here we have little humans that are running the earth and calling us mom or dad or needing to be fed. And, you know, we have more things we have to do. So we've come home. We've come from this, again, really nice emotional high when we were just really focused on ourselves and our own career paths or our own personal development paths. And now we're coming back in, and new blocking points, although we love them, are now cropping up and pulling again and again kind of depleting our energy and our intent from that pure vision that we had of our clarity of peace. And if it wasn't enough that you have the children now maybe being able to pull away your attention and divide it, then you even have like your man's best friend. So everybody now needs you. You know, the dog needs to be walked. People are now threatening you if they don't get your attention. So again, you're being pulled in more and more directions, and your attention span and your intent is starting to quickly fragment. If it wasn't enough at home, we come back to the office and now work reality sets in. So now we are compounding the number of factors that is really taking away from our event high and, again, our intention and our planning and our purpose and our passion for what we wanted to do. And we're now putting on top of it all of the reality points of what's actually happening in our day-to-day life, right? So our day-to-day life is threatening to suck us back in and to block us from really making any sort of large step forward in progress. That's what leads to what I call the post-event depression. So we went from our clarity of peace, our purpose, our proactive plan, our power, and our passion, and now we're facing the big G of guilt, the guilt of non-doing, that I now know it's been a week ago that I went to that event. It's been 2 weeks ago that I went to that event. It's been some amount of time. And here comes the survey in the mail saying, hey, how, you know, in your email saying, how did it go at the event? You know, what did you find, et cetera? And now you're at a point where the way that you're going to respond might be different than if you were surveyed right at that pinnacle of engagement, right? Now you're now going to craft your response based on the reality that you had great intentions, but knowing that you're starting to not fulfill them and you're not taking the actions that you set out to, that you intentionally in your head said you were going to make these changes. And that actually builds not just guilt, but it builds resentment, and you're mad at yourself, and it leads to really a phenomenon called post-event depression. So this is not what we want to have happen with our members, because how are we going to be able to re-engage them easily for the next event, right? And so that's what we're talking about, is how do we create now a more fluid cycle of engagement between the pre, the at, and the post-event experience, so that we're not having to recreate the wheel every time and try to take these people from not knowing anything about the event to trying to lead them up to make them aware of the event, deliver an experience. And what we don't want them to do is kind of have a sugar crash after the event experience is over, where they have any sort of memories that have any sort of mixed emotion. You want your attendees to walk away with what's called an afterglow, and really have this afterglow of what, that you feel if you say, wow, that was a great event. And you want to say, how long can we keep that afterglow feeling alive? And what can we do to help to buffer and to help our attendees actually cope with knowing that we put them into a retreat type of scenario? And how can we help them to cope and kind of insert themselves back into their regular life so that they don't fall into this post-event depression? And so the remainder of our time together, we want to talk about some ideas and how some associations and some nonprofits are now doing this to really be able to stave off some of that depression and to keep you engaged in a way that's realistic, in a way that is sustainable, and that we are now having expectations that we're not going to walk away from the conference or from the event thinking that we're going to have everybody onto our private social networks, at 100% engagement and posting messages and that level of engagement that what we experienced at the live event, understanding we're not going to get to that height again until maybe the next time we have a live experience, but that we could be able to have some engagement that's at a lesser level, but still is able to not drop people down into that valley of post-event engagement. So we're going to talk about ideas for how to keep that afterglow alive and to be able to then have a way that you can continuously market what was experienced and roll it into your next experience of what you're going to have for your live event. So the result being this engagement curve that we're talking about. If we don't do anything to kind of help to stave off the depression, we have a rapid fire. If I was actually to graph the feelings of my attendees, their level of engagement, I would see a sharp decrease. I would see a downward slope where the highest point was when we were all there at the live conference in the huddle, having a wonderful time, having met people, having engaged with people, having learned something new. And as I'm going onto the plane, as I'm coming back and seeing my children, as the dog needs to be fed and walked, as all the work is piling up and the phone calls and the emails and on and on and on, I'm watching again that go straight down, right, into a decrease of engagement. And the result is if you put that up against the almighty dollar there, in this case, talking about U.S. events, we're going to see actually the money that we have taken to acquire that attendee, the return is rapidly declining. And that's very expensive. And in the world now, when we really can measure marketing spend a lot more accurately, largely based on digital tools that we can actually see their behavioral actions and look at conversion, and we can track them. Great example, like if you're at the event and you're tracking who's actually going to which sessions and how long they stayed and things like that, we can start putting real metrics behind what happened at the event, how many emails they opened, how many people clicked through, who posted something to the community, who's on Twitter, who's following us. There's a million different metrics now to start to look at event attendee engagement. And we can combine that with all the data we already have in our association management systems and really get really robust personas, real profiles about these attendees who are going to come to the event. And so in that world now where we can measure, and there's no excuse now for not measuring because we have the data and we have the ways to collect that data, what we're going to see if we don't do something post-event is going to be this radical, big, downward sloping arrow as we watch people that were engaged with us, that were ready to buy, that were spending money, that were open to our ideas, and really with us as the association. They were with us in that moment, and we're watching their attention and their intent and their energy level just go right down through the floor. And that's a costly proposition. So what we want to do, if we look at overall a typical customer engagement cycle that starts with awareness, to, okay, we've put out the message to say the event is coming. We go through the acquisition cycle to say, okay, you need to come to the conference. They go to the conference, they're satisfied, we convert them into going, and we get into that retention referral section. That's a section ideally we want to stay in. That's where we want to be post-event. Unfortunately, with that post-event depression, when we're crashing down into the bottom of the valley there, what is happening is we're not staying within the circle of retention and referral. That would be much easier to continuously market to for the next upcoming event, or to cross-sell or upsell another one of our product or service offerings or programs that we might have. Instead, what we're doing is we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, and we're going right back to square one, where for the next event, we have to start completely over with starting with awareness. And even worse, we're almost in a win-back campaign situation. Now we're talking to people that have attended the event before, but we're talking to them like they've never attended, and now we are trying to get them to piquer their interest, but knowing that they have mixed feelings, honestly, about the last event that they went to, because while it was valuable in their head, perhaps, they do remember that great glow that they had when they were in that moment of the huddle, but they also remember how much they didn't do anything with it, and they start to then question and say, well, how come we never saw the photos that we took again, or what happened to the presentations, or what else could I have gotten out of that? And you never want to have that questioning period arise. What you want to do is find a way in your post-event marketing plan to keep people in that referral and retention mode. So it's not going to be the highest engagement as when they were actually at the conference there, but they're still going to be in the top 3 of awareness. They're still going to keep a really positive memory in the back of their mind. When they hear that, they're going to say, oh yeah, I still know and I've seen evidence of what's happened with our materials post-event. I still am seeing the value of the dollar that I put into the event. I'm still seeing return from that in my own life. So we're going to sit there and say, how do we not fall out of the customer engagement cycle and go right back to the beginning, which is awareness, and how do we stay in the circle of referral and retention? Because again, in the circle of referral and retention, it's a lot less money to market. We have a more intimate connection. We can not do mass marketing, so we can actually talk to people on a very personal and one-to-one and unique level. And we should be able to serve up content or topics or programs or offerings that are going to be very, very, very wanted by them and not have to guess, because we're talking to people that have already attended, that have stayed with us, and who are now hopefully interacting with us and telling us what they want. That puts us into a situation where we can then just serve back to what they're asking for. And again, not surprisingly, you're going to have a much higher level of satisfaction. So what we want to do again is stop this reinventing the wheel each time, start moving to thinking about a longer event life cycle plan, and thinking about the post-event piece to how do we continue to engage people and bridge the gap between live event to live event. Okay, and so what we're trying to do is work with organizations to look at that post-event period and say, what else can we do easily from a communication standpoint to basically remarket what you've already invested in and get more out of it. So here's a couple of ideas. So first of all, the overall remedy that we're going to propose today is kind of the apple a day type of approach, meaning we understand you can't change everything overnight, and you can't put in brand new programs and have endless amounts of money. And if you are, let me know on our chat pod there if you're the organization that has endless amounts of money and tons of latitude to do whatever you want and experiment on your members, because we don't cross those, we don't come across many of those types of associations. So what you can do, though, is do a little bit each day, because that's what we know creates true, sustainable, long-term change. So what are a couple of these ideas that you might be able to start to wrap into your post-event plan and be able to do this in a consistent way to build up a much, or I guess I should say, to stop having that big fall off, the big cliff fall off of your members where the event is over and the only thing that maybe they receive is one follow-up survey and nothing about the event is to be seen again. So a couple ideas for you. Number one, why not set expectations? So while you're actually at the event, even before that, even when you're taking in your speaker sessions, or if you're doing a call for sessions, why not, most organizations say, give us the 3 key learning objectives, or what format do you want to have this, et cetera. Why not add a component in there knowing that it's designed specifically for the post-event experience, and putting a little bit of that onus back on the speaker to ask some questions like, what should the attendees be able to do with this information when they return home? Something like that. What is going to be the actionable points that attendees should be able to do within 1 month of leaving your session and coming back into reality? How can attendees be able to take this information and make it actionable, today, in 30 days, in 60 days, et cetera, et cetera? How will an attendee measure the value of the education that they received in their own lives, right? So how can we actually see this? This does 2 things. One, it gets the speaker to be really in an actionable mindset. So not just coming up there and pontificating, but coming up and giving practical, pragmatic approaches that can be taken home that day. Maybe then they supplement their session with worksheets or with actual guidelines or with take-home plans, something that can be followed up on and really ultimately measured. It also sets you up for a longer-term engagement cycle. So if the expectation overall is that the session is going to provide that, and the speaker is now speaking to from a standpoint of I'm going to be here today just for a little slice of time with you, but that I want to engage with you longer term, and I'm here to make you proactive. So why don't we retouch base again in another 30 days, 60 days, something like that. It sets you up to have kind of some subsequent events where you can have these kind of key engagement moments, or what I would say a multi-touch point strategy to allow you to continue the feeling that they had at that live event and to continue that learning and that interaction. Because if you hit on a really topic that has a lot of buzz to it, or that had a lot of lift, if you will, that people are really interested in, why not take that and be able to take it to the next level or continue it? So there's nothing worse than being in a session where, standing remotely and people were like, wow, this is really good content. And then you go home and you're on your own thinking about it going, wow, I wonder if anybody else was in that session and thought the same thing. So are you following up with some sort of follow-up community or opportunity to bring people back together on sessions, let's say, that you knew were really exciting, to be able to allow them to engage easily? And one way you could do that, again, is setting expectations at the event. Why not even include that as you're talking at the event and say, listen, our event we know is one slice of 2 days of your time together, et cetera. We want to make sure that we have these kind of coping mechanisms in place so that you don't fall into this engagement valley, because our whole purpose here as the association is to find a way to connect with you and keep this education and this networking going. So some thoughts there. Here's another one. In the land of surveys, one of my favorite jokes to say with associations is how much of your survey data that you get back is it about environmental aspects, such as the room is too cold and the buffet lines are too long, right? It's like a standard, it's so cliche because it's so true that, it's like a standard joke that you can talk with almost any event professional and say, this is the level of the survey data. So why not just know that and just break out a survey portion that's called environmental factors? And instead of allowing them to just have free-form access to say, the room's cold, why not just ask them flat out so they feel like they've been heard, and now you get some feedback that you can take back to the venue, et cetera, in being able to plan accordingly and whatnot. So just break it out and say, here's our environmental factors. How was the food lines? How was the, room temperatures, et cetera. So that way you can get to the meat of what you're really trying to ask, which is a lot of times now where surveys are going to fewer questions, and honestly, a lot of times maybe 1 to 3 questions, and really asking the heart of the matter. So here's 4 questions that I put up there to just food for thought. The questions that I often ask is, did you learn something? So I just want to know if all the information presented there, did you actually learn something new? Is something there valuable? And I also put little asterisks there next to that question, because if you're an organization where you say your top 2 benefits of membership is education and networking, then these are the questions you should ask, because you can then take the data and feed it back to your membership to prove these 2 value propositions that you are purporting to provide. So did you learn something? And did you make a meaningful new professional connection? Or if it's depending on obviously what your association is. But did you make a meaningful new connection that's going to help you in some way? Okay, and again, that can be behind the scenes data to show that you actually are delivering on your value of networking, and that it's a true thing, and it's not like, hey, we had an open bar and allowed you to take access of that. So you're saying, are you really a facilitator? Are you the association fulfilling your piece as facilitator in being able to bring people together in a meaningful way? Third, would you recommend this to a colleague? Now, this is based on what is called the Net Promoter Score theory, or there's a whole book on it, or called NPS for those in the know. And basically, it boils down to the idea that if it was worth it, you would recommend it. Okay, and so that's the number one kind of aspect that many consumer brands now focus in on, because all they want to know is, would you recommend this to a friend? And if the answer is yes, then they're on point. What they look for really is the people that say no. And actually, when you go to look at NPS results, the yeses are great. You don't really look at those so much. What you do is you key in on the no's, and you go hunt those people down and find out why they wouldn't recommend it, because that's what's going to give you the real insight as to what you need to innovate or change. And last thing, open-ended of what else should we do? And just leave it open to that. What else should we do? And then find out if it's a different topic, if they should do more of that. We hate the format. We need to have need to stop having Mexican food at the buffet, whatever it might be, but just leave that open-ended. But what you can do with that is then feed, again, back these results to your actual attendees. For example, let's say that we ask those questions. Now I could send a follow-up email to all of the people who participate in the survey and not, but all the attendees to say, and I can put this in my next materials for my next time that I'm going to market this event. So my next pre-event stage for my next event, I could say something like 78% of people learned something new, or 52% made a meaningful new professional connection at this particular event. Or we could say 88% said the room was too cold. And then we could go hunt down a new sponsor for a logoed pashmina or blanket. Like, you could get creative with this material, because why not? Why not be able to do something like that, that you're then able to get that to attendees? It could be a real win-win, and maybe it's something new and dynamic that you hadn't thought to do. So there's gold in those hills if you look at the data from perhaps a different way. And then I just want to note that you might also want to think about having different survey result time periods. So I was saying that, if you were to survey people on site, leaving the conference before maybe they start getting their blocking points of the airline ticket, et cetera, coming in, you might have a very different result set than if you got them maybe 2.5 weeks, and probably third week, where kind of habits fall off there, is week 3 is the danger time. If you survey them in that third week, in that reality stage, and then if you looked at them post that, maybe 5 weeks out, when they've given up their new program, kind of in that depression stage. Maybe you also want to say, maybe you want to look at it even further out. And so one of the things you can do with that is to say, how are you changing over time? So another idea for what you can do, and many organizations are now doing this, well, many might be a little bit of an overstatement, the very kind of cutting edge ones, the ones who are saying, hey, listen, we've got great content and we're starting to understand how to utilize content marketing techniques. They are actually doing summaries within the content of that particular event. So kind of like Cliff Notes, but they're able to then serve up these summaries, which are fantastic, especially if you have competing tracks. So maybe you can only, go to one event during the Tuesday 1 to 2 p.m. slot. So you really would like to know what else happened at the other events, but your organization is not at the point yet where you can live stream all the events, or you can record all of the events with audio and video. But what you can do that's a very cost-effective manner is to get the content summaries and have people kind of go on site. They can come up with a content plan for you and be able to create these content summaries that you can then create a content library, and people can now go and access that. Now you can pique the interest of people who didn't come to the session but wish they could have, and then you can actually survey them to find out if that was the content summary of something that was of interest, and if do they want to know more. So we ourselves are working with a company called Smarter Shift, and they're an expert firm in this kind of content creation and curation, especially for events. And it's becoming something that we're seeing more and more associations be able to do, because you have the content. It's a matter of how can you now serve up that same content in a variety of modalities and a multi-touch point, kind of multi-channel way that's very user-centric. And so as you stay with us through the HighRoad U series, you'll see us say that multi-touch point, multi-channel, user-centric again and again, because that's kind of the tripod, if you will, of kind of modern day marketing. So think about providing content summaries. Why not, again, hold some follow-up events? So again, if we knew that we had a standing room only session, if we knew we had a speaker who had a topic that was really well received, why not go ahead and hold some follow-up events that could be easy? They don't have to be that formal. You could do things like hold a tweet chat for a featured speaker or a subject matter expert. You could have additional follow-up webinars to say, listen, this was one of the hottest topics we had at the conference. We're now going to offer a 3-part series to really supplement that. And if you missed it, here you can now interact with us in this virtual way. Maybe you want to start using Google Plus Hangouts in order to have a collaborative session. So again, could you be the facilitator between 2 or 3 people that clearly within their survey results really said something like, this is a topic I want to hear more about? Could you then facilitate a group with them and let them get together and really talk and discuss this? So now this is looking at how we can do post-event engagement and keep that, again, experiential treatment going. You could always send out your follow-up newsletter. What's great about here is using those content summary snippets and then returning them back to that content summary library, talking to them at a high level, like here's the hot trends that we heard at 2013's conference, and then again making those promises for what's to come. Like, we're hearing that people are interested in doing this. Who's interested in attending a Google Plus Hangout? Who knows what a Google Plus Hangout is? So again, it's another way that you can take on that interactive dialogue approach with your attendees to continue to have that excitement about the post-event experience, and to keep saying to these people, you were part of something special and you showed interest in it. And if people don't have any interest, that's okay. You don't have to try to convert everybody, but the people that really do want to stick with it and continue to get that dollar out of their live experience, this is something you can offer. And you could do something that you could think about. You could either gate it and only allow people that attended the event, the live event, to have access to these things, or you could use some of this post-event follow-up to try to do prospecting for attendees for the next kind of live event and allow them to get a taste of it, but say we're only going to do certain things at the live event. So you're creating demand for only being there in person. So for those of you who feel like virtual events will somehow undermine live events, you can play between this world and say, do we gate content and only allow people that paid for the live experience to get post-event access? Or do we want to use that post-event time period to try to drum up more interest and do a very soft prospecting type of campaign to help make it easier to convert them in to a new attendee, or a paid attendee, I should say, for the subsequent event? And people are really playing with those whole interactive experiences to say, how do we effectively do this? So again, we don't have to start from scratch the next time we go to market the pre-event phase and we're starting over. It's a lot easier to start talking to people who've already been engaged with you and are already warm leads, if you will, than people that, now you have to send out a direct mail program guide to, and they've had no interaction with you since the last time they went to the conference. There's also a number of tools out there that make it really easy for you to repurpose and remarket content that you have, or to continue to curate content around topics that are obvious or evident that were very interesting at the actual conference. So maybe it's very clear that you had, again, some standing room only sessions, or there's some definite topics that you just know are very pertinent to the membership. You could go ahead and put out these kinds of social media newspapers, if you will. Some of them are based on Twitter. Some of them are based on a combination of Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. Some of them are based on RSS feeds. But I've just listed a few here to give you some examples of how much is out there that's either free or very low cost a month to allow you to pull together gobs of content, whether your own or in addition to other content that's readily out there in the market around hot topics, that you can then deliver back under your brand and, again, help to extend that event experience. These are things that you can put together very quickly and very economically and allow you to get, again, the benefit on the digital marketing side of additional search engine optimization, additional presence, additional things to talk about, and additional ways to show how you as a association are bridging the gap into the digital world and able to navigate that very effectively. Because again, it's all about now giving back to members a mode that the member themselves want. So it allows you to then be very proactive and understand that we're in a world of additive, which means that you can't say, well, we don't have enough capacity internally to do Twitter, so we're not going to do it, but all of your members are on Twitter, right? We understand it's not based on the association, it's based on the member and how they're going to learn and how they're going to interact with you nowadays. So being able to repurpose and remarket that content, that all those presentations you collected, all the maybe Twitter feeds that you had, being able to take all that and aggregate it and reuse it over time, over the next several months, is something that is really key. And again, many a tool out there in the market to help you to do that. Another idea is actually using your photos. So most organizations, when they have their live event, have one, if not more, professional photographers, yet they often fall into this kind of black box and no one sees these things again. So why not, instead of just taking the image gallery sites, why not start using them on Pinterest? Why not make more Facebook pieces and ask people to go back and proactively tag themselves? Take the time to annotate these. Fold images back into your email newsletters, especially. Stop using stock photo art. You've got enough photos that you've taken over the years that you can do more with, and again, present back to your audience a more authentic picture. And when you tweet, go ahead and tweet something and use words like spotted. You know, we saw, and then name drop, so-and-so connecting with new committee members at this thing. And you could keep that going for a good 90 days post-event. And it keeps people kind of saying, hey, maybe there's something new that I can do. You don't have to do it all within 2 weeks post-event because, one, it's not realistic time frame because these things take time, and that's okay because what you want to do is dole it out over a period of weeks to keep people engaged. Okay? Another idea, why not resurvey at a 90-day interval? Now, if you know anything about kind of health programs or nutrition programs, you notice that many a diet and weight loss and fitness program is a 90-day program. Why is that? Is it coincidence? It's not. The first 30 days, you have people all gung-ho, and they get into it, and then round about that mid-second month is where things kind of usually fall to the wayside, and they're either going to stick with you or not. And that's kind of a decision period. But 90 days is really the time frame that it takes people to really get something ingrained in their head and to make it into a lifestyle. So at 90 days, why not come back and ask somebody, have you applied anything you've learned? Have you stayed in touch with your new contact at, let's say, your meaningful connection that we help to broker? So come back and find out if this the event itself has had meaningful impact, and that is on the sustainable side. And then again, whatever survey results you get back, start feeding it back into the membership and talking about it. You know, don't kind of hide it. We're in a mode, if you look at the big brands in the consumer world, the mode and the idea is constant communication, constant feedback loops. So you're getting surveyed perpetually because that's how they're doing product innovation and program innovation, to have that dialogue consistently between the organization and the member and not feel like you're bothering them. You're only bothering the member if you're not going to do anything with the data and that you have no intention of actually serving something back to them that they themselves are saying that they want. Last kind of piece of it is public praise. So we're in football season, so I thought I'd pull up an image of what routinely happens in college football or, you know, also youth football and et cetera, and they get stickers. So if you're a football fan, and I'm a big Buckeye fan, you're seeing here a football helmet, and what they do is they give a sticker to a player when they perform something that is they consider to be very praiseworthy, and they don't tell the team, you know, they don't tell the individual privately. They tell them publicly, and they slap this big sticker on their head so that everybody knows, fans, the other teammates, et cetera, the other team, that this person has done something that's worthy to be publicly praised. And there's no better thing to do with members than to probably do this. And again, there's a number of ways that you can do public praise. You can do that again through pictures and postings in Facebook. Certainly you can do call-outs within your LinkedIn groups, within your private social network groups. Many of those have their own systems and mechanisms for doing that, whether you have like virtual badges or whatnot. Certainly doing it within Twitter. And then also in newsletters, and maybe rethink your strategy there if we're saying, you know, do we need to have kind of a section that we're pulling out to follow up on particular members? So the people that responded to that 90-day survey, they're probably worthy of some public praise to say, this person stuck with us for 90 days. It's the same reason that they showcase a particular person at the end of their 90-day, you know, biggest loser kind of weight loss program or whatever, because they're showing that that person stuck with it. And they're saying to everybody else, this person did it, you can too. So why not think about how you can fold in that public praise on an ongoing basis to basically reward the attendees that have shown the type of post-event engagement that you're looking for, right? So constantly pointing out and propping up the example of how you want members to behave and being able to say and tie it back consistently to that event from which they came or they met the people or et cetera. So again, maybe you made a meaningful connection. Maybe you had a first-time attendee program. Maybe you had a conference buddy program. Why not track those two people again over time and find out their story and continue to tell that story back to the rest of the attendee population? It can be a really powerful thing. And then the next time they're at the live event, maybe they get something special for having stayed together. final thought there is something that's called the Janus Moment. So Janus is the god of beginnings. It's the basis of the month January, and it's the start of, one side of the god is looking backwards, and the other part of the god is looking forward. So you're at the dividing moment. So let's say we're talking about an annual event. Why not put out a newsletter that's basically saying it's been 6 months, right? And here's what we've done. 6 months, like it's been 6 months since our conference. So in the last 6 months, here's what's occurred. We had these 5 things happen at the event. These were the hot trends. And then since then, we've had this many tweet chats, this many pods. They had a meetup group. We had a webinar. We put out something, et cetera. And then, hey, we've got 6 months now until the conference, and here's how we expect to continue to be able to pull you in, and what we're going to then start to deliver at the conference that's upcoming. And you're starting to do, again, a different type of soft promotion. So you're starting to, again, build momentum and build demand for what can happen at that event. And that's something that's very different than sending out an email saying early bird pricing is happening this day. Early bird pricing is happening this day. You want people to come to you and have enough demand created that you don't have to beat them over the head with discounts in order for them to engage with you. So the end of all this, what we were wrapping up and saying is that this whole approach of looking at the post-event phase is to really get us to break us out of that cycle of thinking that all of our marketing, when we say event marketing, is meaning promotion and meaning we're trying to push people to attend. Okay, and we're trying to break that and say we need to look at modern event marketing over a life cycle, over a multi-season approach, and that this is maybe just rolls right into the next event, but we don't have this big time that we're, again, doing early bird pricing and promotion to get attendees in the seats, and then as soon as the conference is done, we just drop off and we just start promoting the next event. So we want to have a multi-seasonal approach. And again, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is create a totally new pattern of engagement with our members, one that's balanced, one that's realistic, and one that's authentic, one that has taken our attendee and blended in his professional life with his personal life and being able to make a difference. And they can say back to us, yeah, this is how I've taken in some of the teachings or some of the things I've learned or some of the people I've met and blended it into my now continuous daily life, which I consider status quo, my own norm. And here, association, here is how you've affected me. Because if we can blend that in, if we can be able to affect our member and be able to make them a more holistic person, professionally, personally, et cetera, that is going to actually be the root of real engagement and true loyalty over time. And that's now the thought pattern behind kind of modern event marketing and how we can take that pinnacle experience, that really height of that incredible at-event moment that we had, and take that afterglow effect and continue to blend it into a higher level of connectivity between that particular individual and the association itself. So with that, that's everything that I wanted to present today. And Jeff, I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, Suzanne. Thank you. It is the Q&A segment of our training, and your participation is key to success, so please do not be afraid to ask questions. You can ask the questions via the web conference system simply by typing them into the Q&A box on the right-hand side of the screen and then clicking the call out button or hitting enter on your keyboard. I would also like to mention that ASAE is providing CAE credits for attending this webinar. If you would like to receive those credits, please type in your full name and email address into the Q&A pod, and we can get those credits to you. All right. Looks like our first question here. Suzanne, you had mentioned some tracking information of attendees. Do you have any suggestions, or have you seen some AMS that's been working better than others on this tracking of the information?
So I think, and thank you for that question. I think we're asking about tracking the attendee information. I think we're talking about at the actual event session. I'm a little bit guessing, but a couple of thoughts there of how you can track attendees and their information session. Number one, you need a really great event registration system. One of the things I've definitely noticed over the last couple of years of my career is that we're always scared we always think of the attendee or the member as like an entity that we, should be very scared about asking them questions. And again, that's only from the mindset, that's really a mass marketing mindset that we need to shed. So if we are very clear and upfront with them about we're asking the questions because we're trying to do something nice for you, people are actually very willing to give you all sorts of details. So I'll give you an example. During registration, there's so many pieces of information you can actually extract from a registrant. And again, you don't have to do it in one fell swoop. So again, multi-stage kind of approach. So you should have an event system that allows you to do multi-stage questioning. What do I mean by that? Maybe your first and foremost is you need to get the money in the door. Totally get it. So you need to get those butts in seats. So you need to get it streamlined as possible. Just get them to register and give you the money so that they're set. But once they're set, why not follow up and say, okay, hey, now that we know you're coming, can you give us some insight as to kind of like what foods you like or what foods you can't have or who do you want to sit next to? Or what kind of session formats are you interested in? Do you want to have a deep dive session? Do you want to use technology? Do you want to have a quick break session? Are you interested in meeting new people? Do you want us to match you with people? There's all sorts of ways that you could do interactive touch points using that same event registration system, let's just say, over time. Now, once you get to the event, there's all sorts of ways you can track them. Certainly, there's all sorts of new and amazing things you can now do with mobile and with badging at point of check-in, being able to scan things, being able to use, there's a company that we partner with called Token where you can do kind of point-to-point contact exchange using a little hardware device, or you can get rid of collateral and track that. All of it's trackable. You can certainly do session door scanning or, again, be able to get them through mobile in some way, mobile check-in at the door, take all that information back. Any of that can now be put into today's top association management systems. And then any of the pieces we're talking about, all of your emails for sure, all of your surveys, all of your webinar registrations, who attended, who registered for it, who was there, how long when they were there, all of that can be integrated and being put back into your AMS so you can extract that and you can put that whole thing together as a persona. And I know one question somebody's already asked me is, can we do a further webinar that's just talking about data on event data and where to get it and how to build these kind of attendee personas? Because again, you could say to yourself, for the people that have all registered during Early Bird Special for the last 5 years, have we really looked at a strategy for what we should be doing with these people? Are we actually slicing and dicing in different segments? So as far as, key AMSs to, I think, to Victoria's question there, the keys that you need to have for a good AMS is connectivity ability, so good APIs, good openness that you can be able to extract data in and out, so be able to push data, read data, so you can now interconnect the systems, because what people are going for, associations are going for, is to be able to put together that interactive hub of communications, the ecosystem. And in order to do that, you have to use really top-notch systems that have been built to make sure that data can flow easily between one and the other.
All right, great. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A pod. Would also like to point out above the Q&A pod, there's an important information box, and that has a link to the HighRoad, the U educational offerings. So you can see some past webinars, information about upcoming events, all there as well, if you can just click that link in the important information box above. All right, Suzanne, doesn't look like there's any other questions at this point. If there are, definitely feel free to keep typing them in. But Suzanne, if you want to do a brief wrap-up, and then we can close the session down.
Sure. So, just in sum, we're hoping to prod you and your association to think a little bit differently about this post-event phase and start to add some other ways to engage both before the conference, or before the event, I should say, keeping the event generic, even during, maybe adding on a virtual component during the live portion, and then post-event. So all of it, again, from the premise of multi-touch point, multi-channel, and user-centric. And so HighRoad U is all about developing more materials and more thoughts about these types of topics, and looking at event marketing happens to be our theme for this month. But next month we take that same premise and we start looking at membership marketing, and we'll continue on down the path there for the rest of the year. But, you know, in sum, think of us as a great group that we can think together and start to look for new examples and start to be able to enact some change there and start to do things a little bit differently. Because at HighRoad, we are seen as being innovative and working with associations. We're experts in creating that communications hub that I was talking about, integrating all those systems together and really doing more with it. So once the technology is in place, it's now about how do we apply it to a strategy to really bump up that member engagement and focus in on the right people with the right messages at that right time. So thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope to see everybody on future events.
All right, great. Actually, Suzanne, there was one last question that came in.
Oh, okay.
You ready? All right.
Just in time.
Excellent. Just under the wire, definitely. Is there an easy way to offer some of your conference videos to just members and people that attended the event?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I think the hard part is just getting the conference videos. once you have that part, you can easily gate it with just either if you want to use an event registration system to do that. And again, it depends if you have e-commerce on it or not. But even with that, you can then just decide what's that experience pathway you want. And then the technology is certainly there to be able to give that to you to say, okay, well, this piece is for members and this is not, and find ways that you can have ways that you can not share it, et cetera. So it depends, again, what you want to do with your video and what you want the end result to be. So if I was your consultant, that's the first thing I'd say is, well, what do you want your end result to be? You probably want to take a segment of your videos and use it for promotional purposes to create demand. And you probably want to have a segment of your videos that are such high quality caliber in terms of the goodness of content. It's just really, really good stuff that you say, well, maybe that's a piece that I want to just reserve for members. On the other hand, there's other thoughts out there, and actually at HighRoad, since I've been here for the last couple of months, I've really struggled also with that thought pattern to say, do I want to go down this road of having kind of member, non-member kind of content, or what should I do in today's world? And ultimately, I've concluded that the best thing to do, at least for us, is just give all the content away and let the right people find us. And that's something that is scary. It's very scary, but associations are starting to find that might be something that works for them because it allows them to compete effectively with kind of the LinkedIn phenomenon or all these other groups that pop up that is giving away the content, et cetera. And what they're finding is that people then are engaging with them for other reasons. So again, it depends on the strategy, but technologically, there's no reason that you can't easily gate content and then either charge for it or not. It just depends on how you want to put that strategy together, and then the execution is really the easy part. It's really the what do you want to do with it.
All right, great. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for their participation in today's webinar, Keeping Attendees Happy, Thoughts on Post-Event Engagement. Special thank you to our speaker, Suzanne. And if you do have any additional questions or comments, please feel free to email us at support@highroadsolution.com. Today's session was recorded, and you will receive an email within the next few business days with a link to the webinar recording, as well as written answers to any of the questions that we were unable to get to today. Today's webinar is copyrighted by HighRoad Solution with all rights reserved. This concludes today's program. Thank you again, and you may now disconnect.